In the late 15th century, the known world was smaller than it seemed. Maps ended abruptly, oceans stretched into uncertainty, and beyond them lay lands no European power had yet charted or claimed. Yet in 1492, a single voyage would fracture that limited understanding, setting in motion a chain of events that would permanently reshape continents, cultures, and the course of human history. By the end of the 1400s, Europe stood at a turning point. Trade with Asia had long supplied valuable goods, spices, silk, and precious materials, but overland routes were increasingly controlled by powerful intermediaries, making access difficult and expensive. Kingdoms along the Atlantic edge of Europe began searching for alternatives. Portugal had already invested heavily in maritime exploration, navigating down the coast of Africa in pursuit of a sea route to Asia. Spain, newly unified under the crowns of Ferdinand and Isabella, sought its own opportunity to compete. It was within this environment that Christopher Columbus, a Genoese navigator, proposed a bold and controversial idea, reaching Asia by sailing west across the Atlantic Ocean. His calculations underestimated the true size of the Earth and the distance between Europe and Asia, but they aligned just enough with contemporary geographical uncertainties to gain attention. After years of rejection, he secured support from the Spanish monarchy. In August 1492, Columbus departed from the port of Palos with 3 ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. The journey was uncertain, and for the crew, the vast Atlantic represented both hope and fear. Weeks passed with no sight of land. As supplies dwindled and morale weakened, tension grew among the sailors. Yet Columbus persisted, relying on navigation techniques that combined experience, estimation, and incomplete knowledge. On October 12, 1492, land was sighted. The expedition had reached an island in the Caribbean, part of what is now known as the Bahamas. Columbus believed he had arrived in the outskirts of Asia, referring to the inhabitants as Indians, a misidentification that would endure for centuries. What he had actually encountered was a world previously unknown to Europeans, populated by diverse societies with their own complex cultures, economies, and systems of governance. The people Columbus first met were part of the Taino civilization. They lived in organized communities, practiced agriculture, and maintained trade networks across the Caribbean. Initial interactions were marked by curiosity and cautious exchange. Columbus recorded observations about their way of life, noting both their generosity and their unfamiliarity with European weapons. However, these early encounters were shaped by underlying intentions. Columbus had been tasked not only with exploration but also with the potential acquisition of wealth and territory. His reports emphasized the possibility of finding gold and converting local populations to Christianity, aligning with the broader goals of Spanish expansion. Following his initial landing, Columbus continued to explore the Caribbean, visiting islands such as Cuba and Hispaniola. On Hispaniola, the Santa Maria ran aground, leading to the establishment of a small settlement known as La Navidad. This marked one of the first European footholds in the Americas, though it would not endure for long. When Columbus returned to Spain in 1493, he brought news of lands across the Atlantic that appeared rich with opportunity. His voyage was presented as a success, and it immediately captured the attention of European powers. The implications were vast: new territories, potential resources, and the possibility of expanding influence beyond the familiar boundaries of Europe. Subsequent voyages followed. Columbus returned to the Caribbean multiple times, each expedition larger and more ambitious than the last. These journeys shifted from exploration to colonization. Settlements were established, and systems of control began to take shape. The relationship between Europeans and indigenous populations changed rapidly, often becoming strained and unequal. The arrival of Europeans introduced new dynamics that would have profound consequences. Trade expanded, but so did conflict. Systems such as the encomienda were implemented, granting Spanish settlers authority over indigenous labor. While framed as a means of organization and conversion, these systems frequently resulted in exploitation and hardship for local populations. Disease played a significant role in the transformation of the Americas. European explorers and settlers carried illnesses such as smallpox, measles, and influenza. Indigenous populations, having no prior exposure to these diseases, faced devastating outbreaks.
The demographic impact was severe, altering societies and weakening existing structures. At the same time, the exchange between the Old World and the New World began to reshape global systems. Crops such as maize, potatoes, and tomatoes were introduced to Europe, contributing to population growth and changes in diet. In return, European livestock, crops, and technologies were brought to the Americas. This process, often referred to as the Columbian Exchange, connected continents in ways that had never occurred before. The discovery of the Americas also intensified competition among European powers. Spain quickly moved to assert its claims, supported by agreements such as the Treaty of Tordesillas, which divided newly discovered lands between Spain and Portugal. Other nations, including England and France, would later enter the race, seeking their own territories and trade opportunities. For indigenous civilizations, the arrival of Europeans marked the beginning of a period of profound disruption. Long-established societies encountered new political forces, economic pressures, and cultural influences. In some regions, alliances formed between indigenous groups and European settlers, while in others, resistance emerged. The outcomes varied widely, but the overall impact was transformative. Columbus himself did not fully understand the significance of his voyages. He remained convinced that he had reached parts of Asia, despite growing evidence to the contrary. It would take further exploration by others, including Amerigo Vespucci, to recognize that these lands constituted an entirely separate continent. Over time, the consequences of 1492 extended far beyond the initial voyages. The Atlantic Ocean, once a barrier, became a central pathway for movement and exchange. Trade routes expanded, and the flow of goods, people, and ideas accelerated. This period marked the beginning of what many historians consider the early stages of globalization. Economic systems evolved as well. The extraction of resources from the Americas contributed to the growth of European economies. Precious metals, particularly silver, played a key role in international trade, linking Europe with Asia through complex financial networks. At the same time, the demand for labor led to the expansion of the transatlantic slave trade, a development with lasting human and social consequences. Cultural exchanges also unfolded in multiple directions. Languages, religions, and traditions spread across continents, sometimes blending, sometimes replacing existing practices. The legacy of these interactions can still be seen today in the diversity of cultures throughout the Americas. The events set in motion by Columbus's voyage were not isolated. They were part of a broader pattern of exploration, expansion, and encounter that defined the early modern period. Advances in navigation, shipbuilding, and cartography made long-distance travel more feasible, encouraging further expeditions and discoveries. Yet the story of 1492 is not solely one of exploration or achievement. It is also a story of complexity, marked by both connection and conflict. The meeting of different worlds brought opportunities for exchange, but it also introduced challenges that would unfold over generations. As European presence in the Americas grew, new societies began to form. Colonial structures developed, blending elements from different cultures. Over time, these societies would evolve into independent nations, each shaped by the legacy of early encounters. The significance of 1492 lies not only in the moment of discovery, but in the enduring changes that followed. It marked the beginning of sustained contact between previously separated parts of the world. The consequences were far-reaching, influencing economic systems, political developments, and cultural identities on a global scale. Centuries later, historians continue to examine this period, seeking to understand its complexities and implications. Perspectives have shifted over time, reflecting a broader recognition of the diverse experiences and impacts associated with these events. The narrative is no longer viewed through a single lens, but as a multifaceted chapter in human history. The voyage of 1492 stands as a pivotal moment, not because it was the first instance of human movement across oceans, but because of what followed. It initiated a process that would connect continents, transform societies, and redefine the boundaries of the known world. What began as an attempt to find a new route to Asia became something far greater. It opened pathways that would alter the course of history, bringing distant lands into sustained contact and setting the stage for the modern, interconnected world.